Have you ever noticed how some people can sit on a couch for an entire afternoon and feel completely fine, while other people spend 10 minutes doing nothing and suddenly feel guilty? The dishes are done. The messages are answered. Nothing urgent needs attention. The house is quiet. And somehow, their body still feels like it's forgetting something. There's a strange thing that happens when you grow up too fast. Even years later, your nervous system never fully gets the memo that the emergency is over. You might not think of yourself as someone who had a difficult childhood. In fact, people probably describe you as the opposite: responsible, reliable, mature, the person who always has their life together, the person everyone can count on, the person who rarely causes problems. And that is exactly where the story gets interesting, because people rarely ask how someone became that way. Sometimes maturity is wisdom. Sometimes maturity is experience. And sometimes it's survival. You know what's funny? Children are supposed to be unpredictable. They're supposed to make messes. They're supposed to ask for things. They're supposed to be the least emotionally stable person in the room. But some children learn very early that being a child isn't safe. Not physically unsafe, emotionally unsafe. Maybe there was a parent whose moods controlled the entire atmosphere of the house. Maybe there was constant tension. Maybe there was illness. Maybe there was addiction. Maybe there was conflict. Or maybe nothing dramatic happened at all. Maybe the adults were simply overwhelmed. Whatever the reason, the child starts noticing something. The room feels better when they are easy. The room feels calmer when they're quiet. The room feels safer when they don't need much. So without anyone explicitly asking them to, they begin shrinking. Not physically. Psychologically, they stop asking for help. They stop complaining. They stop expressing certain emotions. They become unusually good at reading faces, unusually good at noticing tone changes, unusually good at sensing tension before anyone else sees it. And adults often love this. Teachers love it, relatives love it, other parents point to them as an example. Look how mature they are. Look how responsible they are. Look how independent they are. What nobody sees is the invisible trade happening underneath. Every strength is costing something. Every compliment is rewarding an adaptation. And the child slowly learns a dangerous lesson. Being needed feels safer than having needs. That lesson follows people for decades. You see it everywhere once you know what to look for. The friend who always checks on everyone else but never talks about themselves. The coworker who takes on extra work without being asked. The sibling who somehow becomes the emotional manager of the entire family. The partner who notices everyone's feelings while completely ignoring their own. From the outside, these people often look incredibly capable. From the inside, many of them are exhausted because there is a strange contradiction they carry. They are comfortable taking care of others, but deeply uncomfortable being taken care of. Someone asks them for help, no problem. Someone offers help to them, suddenly they don't know what to do. Someone needs support, they are there immediately. Someone asks how they are doing, their mind goes blank. What's interesting is that this often doesn't feel like a problem. It feels normal. That is what makes it difficult to notice. When you have spent years being the responsible one, responsibility stops feeling like a role. It starts feeling like your identity. You don't think, I'm carrying too much. You think, this is just who I am, and eventually, something strange happens. The very qualities people admire begin creating invisible loneliness. Because nobody worries about the strong person. Nobody checks on the reliable person. Nobody asks whether the responsible person is tired. Everyone assumes they are fine. After all, they always seem fine. But many people who grew up too fast know a feeling that is difficult to explain. The feeling of secretly wanting someone else to take over. Not forever, just for a moment. Just one day where someone else notices the details. Someone else remembers everything. Someone else makes the decisions. Someone else carries the emotional weight. Not because you are incapable, because you've been capable for too long. And that is a very different kind of exhaustion. People rarely talk about this, but growing up too fast can make rest feel strangely uncomfortable because rest requires something that childhood never fully taught. Trust. Trust that nothing bad will happen if you stop monitoring everything. Trust that people will be okay without your constant involvement. Trust that your value doesn't disappear the moment you stop being useful. For many people, that's harder than it sounds. They sit down to relax and immediately start searching for problems, checking messages, making plans, cleaning something, organizing something, fixing something, anything except simply existing, because productivity feels familiar, usefulness feels familiar, responsibility feels familiar, stillness does not. And yet underneath all of this is something surprisingly human. The child who learned that love was safest when they were helpful. The child who became easy to avoid becoming a burden. The child who learned how to carry things that were never meant to belong to them. That child often grows into an adult who looks incredibly strong. But strength isn't the whole story. There is also grief. Grief for the version of yourself that never got to be carefree. Grief for the mistakes you never felt allowed to make. Grief for the years spent managing situations that should never have been your responsibility. And what's interesting is that many people don't even realize they're carrying that grief. They simply call it stress, or perfectionism, or anxiety, or being a responsible person. But sometimes those things are just grief wearing a different outfit. Maybe that's why certain moments hit unexpectedly hard. A child laughing without a care in the world. A family where everyone seems relaxed. Someone receiving help without apologizing for it. Something inside you recognizes what was missing. Not because you are jealous, because a part of you remembers. And maybe the most important thing to understand is this. The child who grew up too fast wasn't weak. They were adapting. They were doing the best they could with the world they were given. The problem is that adaptations are meant to help us survive a situation. They are not meant to become our entire identity, because eventually life changes. The emergency ends. The danger passes. The household becomes quieter. The years move on. But the role remains. The responsible one, the strong one, the dependable one, the person who never needs anything. And after carrying that identity long enough, it becomes difficult to imagine who you'd be without it. Maybe that's why this realization feels so emotional for many people. Not because they are discovering something new, because they are finally finding words for something they have felt their entire lives. The truth is, growing up too fast doesn't always leave obvious scars. Sometimes it leaves competence. Sometimes it leaves maturity. Sometimes it leaves extraordinary empathy. But it can also leave a person who doesn't know how to put the weight down. A person who feels guilty resting. A person who struggles to receive. A person who keeps carrying responsibilities long after they stop belonging to them. And if that sounds familiar, maybe there's a reason. Maybe the part of you that learned to be strong never got the chance to learn something equally important. How to simply be a child. And maybe that is why, even now, there is a small part of you that still feels tired. Not because you are weak, not because you are failing, but because you have been carrying adulthood since before adulthood was supposed to begin. And that is a very heavy thing for a child to hold.